Hello and welcome to a special edition of Community Connections. I am your host, Anna Orr, and today's guest is a very important man running for Attorney General for the state of Minnesota. Keith Ellison will be joining us to talk about the importance of voting, his connection to the Oromo community, and so much more. This is so important because we are currently looking at states where 5 states offer the opportunity for indentured servitude and/or slavery to be listed as punishment. Our equality, our humanity, and our freedom is truly in our own hands. This is going to be a wonderful episode you won't want to miss. Stay tuned. Welcome, Attorney General Ellison, to Community Connections.
Good to be here, Anna. Thank you.
I'm so glad you worked it in your schedule to join us today.
Well, it was a priority for me.
I love that. Let's go right ahead and jump in. Can you please share with us what are some major roles and responsibilities of the Attorney General in Minnesota?
Well, the Attorney General is a constitutional officer, meaning in the Minnesota Constitution, it says that there shall be an Attorney General. This is written over 157 years ago. And the Attorney General is the people's lawyer, the lawyer whose job it is to look out for the interests of the people of the state of Minnesota. There's a number of roles, but 2 big ones. One is that the Attorney General represents the state of Minnesota and every state agency and the governor and the Secretary of State and the legislature and the judges. And then the Attorney General represents the people of the state of Minnesota, meaning that the Attorney General can sue on behalf of the people of the state of Minnesota if there are people out there committing frauds or people doing ripoffs and people violating Minnesota statutes when it comes to the area of business, commerce, or trade. The idea is that we want a free market, and that means it has to be a fair market, and that means there's an Attorney General who can stand on the side of the consumer, the small farmer, the worker, people who need an advocate. And then, of course, the Attorney General has a very limited role, but a very important role when it comes to crime. There are 87 counties in our state. Those 87 counties hire a county attorney, and they are elected to prosecute local crime. But sometimes they can turn to us at the Attorney General's office and ask us to help. We do help, and I've prosecuted about 47 different people since I've been the Attorney General, and we've won all the cases that we've received, but including the Chauvin case, where the county attorney asked us to be involved and the governor appointed me. So that's basically what the job is. There's a little more to it. I sit on the the pension board. I sit on the pardon board, and there are other various roles, but that's the Attorney General. It's a very important job.
Can you talk to us about who you answer to after we elect you into office outside of the voters?
Yeah, I answer the people. My only boss is the people. The governor is not my boss. The Secretary of State's not my boss. I'm independently and separately elected, and so the people I answer to, well, Anna, that's you and the rest of the public.
That's important to note. Can you share with us what are some of the major issues you will prioritize if you are reelected?
Well, I think it's very important to help people afford their lives. What does that mean? That means that when workers are subject to wage theft, that I have a wage theft unit that goes in and says to employers, you have to give these people their fair due and what you've promised them. It means that we're going to help tenants. When we see tenants being treated unfairly in large numbers, we will intervene in cases like that. Right now we're suing Havenbrook Homes. We took Stephen Meldell to court for ripping off about 267 families in North Minneapolis. We also are going to stand up for Minnesota laws, like when the state legislature passed the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act, to make sure that if you couldn't afford your insulin, there was a pot of money that would help you get your insulin to keep you alive. Mm-hmm. The big pharmaceutical companies tried to tear that law down. I stepped up and defended the law, and we defeated them in court so far. So that's part of my job, too. That's helping people afford their lives. We also sued the major opioid manufacturers, returned over $325 million back to the state of Minnesota to pay for treatment, to pay for education and prevention. And so to tell people get well and escape the slavery of addiction, this is our job. And, we also have been dealing with, sometimes we deal with problem properties. For the folks who are familiar with North Minneapolis and Broadway and Lindale. You know, we took a case, we brought a nuisance case against those problem properties to make sure that those folks are obeying the law and not allowing illegal activity to go on their property. So these are the things that we do every day. We have an important role to play, and my priority will be to help people afford their lives, to make sure that people can live with dignity and safety and respect. I also have an important role in protecting people's rights. So, protecting women's rights. We also, another thing we do, Anna, is we've done a number of studies.
Okay.
One study we did was to reduce deadly force encounters between police and community. So we brought police and community together to have a series of discussions and make some recommendations. Another one is to reduce pharmaceutical drug prices so people can afford the medications, the life-saving medications that they need. And another one we did is on women's economic security. The economy does not impact women and men the same. Women tend to live longer. They also make less. So then that means they're more dependent on Social Security at older ages. Women tend to have to take care of sick family members, meaning the very young or the very old. And so but yet that kind of work is not compensated in the market. Women have additional expenses when they're single when it comes to child care prices, and child care can be extremely expensive. So we're trying to make a difference in terms of women's economic security as well.
You've talked about overall health, so not even just talking about women's productive rights, but aiding with housing, general health care, things like this, community. Can you talk about how you've seen the landscape of our state change, not only in the role as Attorney General, but also your prior role as Congress here?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, our state has done a lot of changing. Minnesota went from in the 1930s and 40s and 50s to being overwhelmingly people of Scandinavian, German background, to people from diverse places, community members who might find themselves from the rural South, or big cities like Detroit and Chicago, people who might be from East Africa, from Addis Ababa or other parts of Ethiopia. They might find themselves from Somalia, they might find themselves from Mexico or Guatemala. And so the state has gotten more diverse. But the people are still good-hearted, well-intentioned. And if you go to them and you say, look, here's a problem that needs solving, you can get enough people to help work on the issue.
What reason would you give that people should re-elect you to the office of Attorney General?
Well, here's the thing. The Attorney General is the people's lawyer. The big companies that have so much to do with our lives, they provide products that we need and we rely on. But when they go too far, when they're not fair, when they overcharge or underserve, you've got to have somebody who's going to be on the side of the people. And so the Attorney General as Attorney General in my reelection and in my future service, I will be the one who will continue to be the people's advocate, who will work with folks to make sure that this economy is fair, that they can prosper, they can thrive, they can have a voice, and that they can live out their best lives.
I think that's important. How can the Oromo community be more of service to your office and the state of Minnesota as you go forward?
Well, it's my job to serve the Oromo community. And so I want to tell everybody in the Oromo community, please, if you find that there is somewhere where your landlord's not fair to you, your employer's not fair to you, or if you feel like there's somebody that you're buying services or products from that's not being fair to you, or if you're having trouble with your utility bills, give me a call at 651-296-3353. 651-296-3353. And we have people there who speak Oromo who can take your call.
That's very important. We recently were at the Brian Cole Center at an MPD event to a recruiting event for 911 dispatchers, addressing the language barrier that so many in Ward 6 were encountering because there was no one there once they picked up the 911 calls to be able to facilitate the emergency calls in their languages.
Right.
So the fact that constituents are able to give you a call and have someone get on the line that speaks their language and then communicate back to them the solutions and then continue forward, I think is very important going forward.
Yeah, and my office will contact the if you have a dispute with a company, my office will contact the company. We'll try to sort out what can be done and, things like that. And sometimes if one company is doing gets too many complaints, then we'll look into, dealing with that on a broader scale. That might mean a lawsuit, that might mean a letter, could mean a lot of things. But the people cannot be without an advocate.
State Attorney Mike Freeman has retired after 24 years, a career run. I want to ask, do you believe that there should ever be term limits?
Well, I think that the term limits should be up to the voters. I don't want to pass a law that tells voters that they cannot have whoever they want. So in my opinion, it should be up to the voters. There are some positions that are so inherently powerful that I think they do need term limits, like president, But because if you let the president stay too long, they can become a dictator. Mm-hmm. But I think that other positions, I think, are different, And I think that in a legislative body, I just think that term limits have some downsides. Let me tell you what one downside of a term limit is that the only person who the people control is the elected official. You don't control the press as a regular citizen. The press they do what they want. They have a freedom of the press. They don't control the lobbyists. You don't control the lobbyists.
Right.
There's no term limits on being a lobbyist. You don't control the people who work in the system. So the people who are administrative workers. And so what ends up happening is that by time you as an elected official even really learn what's going on, you have to leave because you have term limits. But all these other folks who work in the institution, there's no term limits for them. So they end up basically deciding things, right? Because what happens when you're newly elected? You go in there, you've never done the job before, you're going to say, well, how does this work? And who are you going to ask? Maybe you'll ask somebody who works in the administration, or maybe you'll ask somebody who's a lobbyist. And what are they going to tell you? What works for them? What works for them? And they'll tell you, that can't be done. That's never been done. That's a bad idea. Well, maybe it's exactly what the people need, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to these folks. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, democracy means that we choose the people who are going to make the decisions for us. And so I think that term limits are often thrown out as something to solve every problem, but they don't solve. They solve some problems, but they create others.
Can you provide, for anyone that wants to stay connected, I know you gave the phone number, but can you provide any websites or social media handles so that people can directly contact you?
Well, if you want to talk to me on Twitter, you can go at Keith Ellison, I'm on Facebook too. You can also, if you want to talk to me in my official capacity as the Attorney General, you can email me on the website, which is just ag.state.mn.us, and you can just go to the website, ag.state.mn.us, and you can send me a note there. And I always love talking to people, so I look forward to folks reaching out. And again, the number is 651-296-3353. Now, if you want to talk to me, just tell the person who answers, I need to talk to Keith. But you may not need to talk to me. If you have a dispute with Comcast, you may not need to talk to me. You need to talk to the folks who do that every day.
I'm going to have you repeat that. That's very important, because I think oftentimes we're in the day and age where people say customer service and they want to speak right away to the person at the top.
Right.
But that's not always the case.
Yeah, you're wasting your time talking to me. I mean, the people, if you call the number I gave you, those people are specialists in resolving consumer disputes. And by the way, if you call on the weekend, you're going to get a machine. But we answer complaints even throughout the weekend if you file by online. And you can file a complaint online, right? You can file a complaint online, and you can upload pictures and documents. But you will get a call if you call during the week, and a person will answer the phone, and they only wait for about 5-6 seconds before somebody's going to pick up that phone during the week.
That's important. Thank you for joining me. Can you do me a favor? Lastly, look in this camera and provide one last plea to voters before we head into our opportunity to cast our votes.
Akama Oromo. Galatome for having me here. As you know, I'm a friend of the Oromo community, And when I was in Congress, I stood with the Oromo community and demanded that there be press freedom and human rights in Ethiopia for the people who are Oromo. I think this is very important to remember, because if you trust in me to be your advocate when I was in Congress, you can trust me to be your advocate while I am the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. And so I ask you for your support, and know that when you have a problem, you can call on me. You can call on your Attorney General, Keith Ellison, your friend, a friend of the Oromo community. Well, I want to say to everyone, including members of the Oromo community, that it is that you have made Minnesota a better place. I'd like to tell you that if you want to keep it to be a great place, as you've worked so hard to make it a great place, it's important to vote for people who are working to support your family. I am working to support all workers, including workers who find their roots who are Oromo, tenants who are Oromo, consumers who are Oromo, and people who are Oromo who are just looking for fairness and decency and respect. I'd like to ask you for your support right now, and I hope for you the best, and I look forward to being in touch.
I just wanted to say thank you, Attorney General Ellison, and all the best to you as you continue your race for candidacy.
Galatomo to you and to everyone listening. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. A special thank you to the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, and his amazing team. I also would like to send a very special thank you to Faisa for scheduling our interview today. I would love to leave you with a special quote. Frederick Douglass once said, "Slavery is not abolished until the black man has the ballot." This was said in 1865. I'm sad that this is still true today. Please go out and cast your vote and let your voice be heard. You can vote today leading up to November 8th until polls close. As always, I am your host, Anna Orr, and this has been a very special edition of Community Connections. I look forward to connecting again with you soon.